Then said he unto them, My soul, verse 38, is exceeding sorrowful even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me. And he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. Middle of verse 40, he saith to Peter, Could ye not watch with me? Because he came and found them asleep. Verse 42, he went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them and went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he cometh to his disciples, and saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Now look, between that and the next verse, there's possibly hours. But notice the infinite mercy of Jesus. They failed him once, twice, three times, in his darkest hour. And yet verse 46 says, Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that betrayeth me. So Jesus waited patiently while they slept in the most critical hour of his life. You may not agree with me, that's all right. But I believe that's exactly what the church is doing now in the most critical hour since she was founded. She's sleeping and therefore failing her Lord in this most critical of all critical hours in history. But they fell asleep. And in the most critical hour, when he needed that companionship, they failed him. And I say again, this got to me today. I believe this is the most critical hour in history, and the church is playing games. Jesus at least expected they would be praying, and they're sleeping. As I read this again, and I thought how he waited for them. He could hear them maybe snoring and turning over and thinking, yes, another hour, maybe another hour, and the daylight will come. And you'll wake up, you've been through the most amazing night in history, and it passed over you like that. And you know, I think we're doing the same thing very much in the church. Just Sunday again, so we go to church Sunday morning. Oh, we've a lovely choir, and a nice pastor, and we'll have a nice time. Well, if he was disappointed and disgusted with those disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane, do you think he's disgusted and disappointed tonight? Oh, let me ask you this. He wept over Jerusalem, the city he loved so much. Do you think he's weeping over his church tonight? Can you see him there in Gethsemane? No visible audience, the disciples away there sleeping, demons looking on, angels looking on, the Father looking on. When I read this about my Lord, my Master, going into Gethsemane, his soul is exceedingly bowed down. He goes a little further away from them, as though he wants more privacy, or privacy if you like. And there he is all alone, and then all the billows, as it says in the 22nd Psalm, all thy billows have gone over me. I don't understand, no man that ever preached understands how God was contracted to a span, incomprehensibly made man. How the heaven of heavens cannot contain God, and yet is pressed into the matrix of the Virgin Mary. I don't understand how the Ancient of Days became a babe. I don't understand how he whose life had to begin his life all over there in the womb of the woman. I don't understand he that gave life everything, hangs on his mother's breast for sustenance every day. I do not understand how God became man. As Wesley says, God contracted to a span, incomprehensibly made man. But less do I understand how he became sin for us. What does he say? Father, if it be possible, may this cup pass away from me. But if I drink it, then thy will be done. What was in that cup? By one man's disobedience, sin entered into the world, and death because of sin. And every sin that you can name, the vulgar, vile, wretched, rotten stuff, and they were all in that cup. I've told a story before, I'll tell you again. In the largest church I pastored, I was in my 20s, and it was at the Tabernacle in Oldham outside of Manchester. And going down the street one day, it was 5 minutes of 5, I remember, and as I went past the door of this very humble kind of place, this lady put her head out and said, I know who you are, you're the pastor at the Tabernacle. I said, that's right. I've been to the Tabernacle, I usually sit at the back. I'm very poor, and I can't have anything to put in your offering. I said, all right. You come in my house and have a cup of tea. I said, no, I'm sorry, it's 5 minutes of 5, and I'm due for tea, as we say in England, or supper at 5 o'clock. No, that's not the reason. That's not the reason. You won't be coming because I'm poor, and it isn't a nice house like some of your folk are. I'll come in. I went in. Kind of a house you go in and hold your nose as you go in, you know. I've been in some pigsties of a house, but never one like that, I'll tell you that. I sat down at the table, and there was just about this much space to get from the door, the front door, and it was all stacked up with books. She bought them at a junk shop down the road. She'd read thousands of them. The table was full. And there's a little space at the sink, and then there was a big sink. It was piled up with dishes. She hadn't had a washing up of dishes, I'm sure, for months. And there's a nice piece of bacon, and it was all green and moldy, you know. A real appetizing kind of thing. She'd $50 worth of penicillin on that thing, I'm sure. And she didn't even know. She said, "You do drink tea?" I said, "Yes." She said, "All right." And she had a teapot that had been white once, and it was all messed up on the outside, and she reached in the sink and took a cup out that was all slimy on the outside, and as I looked in, it had tea leaves and some corruption in the bottom. And she just took that black tea and she poured it in that cup. And she said, "Do you take cream?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "I don't have any." "Do you take sugar?" "Yeah, I don't have any." You know, as she held, her fingernails were all in mourning. They were covered with dirt, and she held that filthy cup out with that rotten, cold tea, with no sugar, no cream, no anything. And I looked at it, and I guess I shrunk off from it, you know. She said, "Drink it." You know, as I put my hand out to take that cup, right there, I've never forgotten it. My mind just went 2,000 miles away from England and 2,000 years back to this man in the garden when the Father said, "Drink it." Drink it. Well, that's enough to lay us out, surely. He's the essence of purity. He's the essence of holiness. He was harmless and undefiled and separate from sinners, and yet he takes the most horrible thing this world has ever had, symbolic of all the sin of all the ages. You can mention it, all the physical corruption, lesbianism, every lousy, rotten, corrupt thing that sends men to jail, that makes men rot in their bodies. Every vicious thing, the pride and the anger and all the other things, the sins of the flesh, the sins of the spirit, and they're all there, and he took that cup. There was nobody there to sustain him. Except, of course, again, the Father. And the men that he trained were all lying around snoring. That's the thing that got to me the more I studied it, the more I meditated over it today. Don't blame them. For heaven's sake, don't criticize those disciples. They never had a volume of 66 books on the lap. They were still doubtful in their minds. I'm sure that he would rise from the dead. What kind of a judgment do you think the church is going to have when we get to the judgment seat, with all the knowledge we have and all the light we have and all the versions we have? A lot of these meetings where we just clapped and had a marvelous time and sat down and went home and couldn't remember the text or what had happened. All we had was a hullabaloo time that stirred our emotions. They look pretty sick at the judgment seat, I think. There's no violation here. There's no disagreement with the Father's will. He accepts this tremendous, agonizing challenge. And I kind of wonder in my mind what he was seeing at that moment in the darkness. Because his resurrection had been prophesied anyhow, and I think that was his consolation. Why did he do it? Why did he do it? He did it for this reason. He said right through his life, all that he did, everything he did, pleased the Father. And you remember the verse that says, "For the joy that was set before him, he suffered the cross, despising the shame." Now, I don't believe he had any joy in hanging on a cross. We try to be modest and they covered Jesus, you know, but I don't believe anybody crucified ever had a covering on him at all. Part of the stark nakedness was part of his humiliation. And he goes to the cross. And he endures the cross because that was the way that the Father had designed it. He came into the world for the sole purpose for 30 years. That cross never had a shadow over it. There was never any gloom over it, never any darkness over it in the truest sense of the word. This is the ultimate goal why I came into the world, that I might please the Father. It's the only way that redemption could be completed. He goes there so different from the priest. The priest had to take an offering for his own blood, and then he had to take an offering for the blood of for the sin of the nation Israel. He was just tied up to one group, to Israel. Now the gospel is for the whosoever. It's for all nations, all people, everywhere. The high priest died. Our high priest will never die. The Aaronic priesthood, they were superseded by their sons, or at least they died and their sons followed them, but here there's no such thing. He ever liveth to make intercession for us. Do you ever look back and wonder how stupid you were for so long? Huh? Why did I go through formality? It's boring to go to church. I think it is. People say, I've tried Christianity, there's nothing in it. I say, I agree, shake hands, there's nothing in it. Well, I've tried it. That's your whole problem. You tried it, you didn't try him. You tried it, you tried a system. You tried saying your prayers, you tried giving tithes, you tried other, but you didn't try him. No man. God has a marvelous record. He's never failed anybody. So if he fails you, you'll be more than the Guinness Book of Records, you'll be in the Eternal Book of Records. You're the only man that ever lived that God failed, or any woman. But he won't do that.
I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. He which testifieth these things saith, Surely I come quickly. Amen. Even so, come, Lord Jesus.